for anybody listening, the Lumineers, people who shine light is what I call them, that at any point that they hear something or heard something in this podcast or it sparked their curiosity, I really like to encourage you to write that down, to follow through with it, to research it. Don't let it stop here. You're looking for growth, enlightenment, expansion, whatever the word is. The way that you're going to get there is by following through, just those tiny little moments of aha, spark, or when you're lit up. So if you had those today, please follow through. And then if you're just feeling social, put the fingers to the keyboards and leave a comment about it. That way we get a feedback of why these conversations are fulfilling and why they're important. And to get...
You got to accentuate the positive. I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. So great to be with you again. And remember, if you like our conversations, hit that like button and subscribe to all the platforms that you're listening to this on. Look who I've got on the show. I know people who are listening to this on audio can't see it, but it's Jamie Butler all the way over there in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. I love this.
Jazz hands for those people who can't see us. So I spoke to Jamie on the show 2016, that far back, and
Time is flying.
We had a great conversation. So if you want to go back and revisit that show, you can do that. We probably won't go over everything that we talked about then. There's more things to talk about. But for people who didn't see that show, I'm going to read a bit of Jamie's bio so you've got an understanding of who Jamie is. I know many of you will know who Jamie is, but some of you won't. So Jamie Butler, born a natural medium. She's a wholeness expert, teacher, lecturer, mom. I love that, M-O-M, mom. We say mum down under, as you know. Host of the Lighter Side show, where she encourages learning truths through humor while letting go of learned behavior. Founder of the Lighter Side network, where the everyday meets the extraordinary. Love that. Author of With Love and Light, a true story about uncommon gifts, and founder of the Center of Love and Light, a live event space, co-founder of a non-profit learning environment. The Love and Light Institute cultivates potential within. Jamie's life goal is to teach people of all ages about their infinite possibilities of healing, joy, and success available to us all when wholeness living is incorporated into our daily lives. As far back as Jamie can remember, she has always been able to see energy fields around people and inanimate objects and hear spirit voices. Her childhood was full of fun as she would play games and like hide and seek with her spirit friends. Now as an adult, those spirit friends give Jamie great insight and guidance, which she shares with others. In her early 20s, Jamie discovered she could trance channel spirit. This is when you allow spirit to borrow your body and your voice to communicate and relay messages to others. You say here on your website, growing up with these abilities was definitely different. However, there were some perks. I was never alone. Think about it. I was never alone.
Never.
So it was essential that I had to learn how to control my abilities. It only took 2 years to figure it out. I was 23 before I could manage my abilities out in public without feeling like I was crazy. This was exciting for me and gave me the encouragement to study the ancient Tibetan healing art of Reiki. It's so interesting. Everyone who starts their sort of healing or spiritual part always does Reiki first. Reiki seems to be this initiation. Like I was about 20 something when I did Reiki, like right way at the beginning. Yeah, so it's interesting how Reiki comes into people's lives. I received the status of Reiki Master and 4 years later in 1996, as well as had a bachelor's degree in fine arts from the University of Florida. I learned massage and hydrotherapy certificate in 1998 from the Florida High School of Massage before relocating to Atlanta, where she lives today. While working as a massage therapist and energy healer, I wanted to understand their physical bodies and assist them with their healing using Reiki, but I noticed that some of the issues wouldn't heal. These kinds of wounds were usually not of this lifetime. So in 2000, you received a master's in hypnosis degree at which extended the education with an intensive past life regression program with Dr. Brian Weiss. I didn't know that you studied with Brian Weiss.
I did, yes.
There you go. You know, your bio kind of reads a little bit like mine. It's so funny because I started sort of understanding my psychic abilities when I was massaging people, working as a massage, and all this information came to me. But you always had the information, which I wasn't aware of. You were about to say something.
Yeah, this is a very long bio. I didn't know she sent such a
Well, she
detailed
didn't.
one.
I took it off your website because we went through your story last time we chatted, and I just wanted to give people a bit of an idea who you are because we're not going to go through your story again. That's why I'm reading out your bio. So you can read more about Jamie on the website. I met Jamie through your work with Elisa Medhurst. Jamie worked with Elisa Medhurst after her son Eric left his body, and the Channeling Eric family worked with the Channeling Eric family as she worked as a translator for Eric on the Channeling Eric YouTube, and also for Elisa's two books, My Son and the Afterlife, Conversations from the Other Side, and My Life After Death, a Memoir from Heaven. So, and it says here, Jamie says, it's not woo-woo, it's true.
That's my favorite.
That's your favorite. It's your favorite line. Yeah, so that's how I first saw you. And when I did, as a psychic and a medium myself, I can see the level at which people read. And I'm very critical about that too, which is terrible. I don't really tell people much. I'm just critical in my own head. And when I saw you, I'm like, oh my God, your level of connection, I had never seen anything like that. I was blown away.
Really? Thank you for saying thank you. That's
Well,
really nice.
I'm sure many people have said that to you.
You know, I do hear, compliments and things of that nature, but I guess because it's something that's so natural to me, I can't understand at the level at what people see me. Like I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, you know,
So
as a psychic yourself, when you're seeing other people read, you know what they're doing, right? You can see what they're tapping into. You can see when it's their mind kicking in and when you can see that. Like I can see that when I see people read. And with you, I just sat back and went, oh my gosh. Because I think you were the first person I ever saw that wasn't one of those psychics that say, I'm getting a name, it starts with a T, it starts with a T, that's kind of what we were used to when we saw psychics. Whereas you'll go, I've got your son here, his name's Eric, and he tells me he shot himself. And it's just like, bang, there was no sort of like, now, was it your son that died? I'm getting a name, it starts with E, is it E, is it a J? That's kind of like, so, yeah.
yeah, that's true. And it's different kind of every time. Sometimes in a reading, names don't pop up. And sometimes I hear things that are just really confusing at a session before our podcast talk. And a woman was standing there and she was like, I'm Juju, Juju. And I was like, what? I don't think I'm hearing this right. And so I kind of laughed and I said, all right, who's Juju? And the woman on the phone was like, oh my God, that's my neighbor. We all called her Juju. Like, are you really saying that? That's the most bizarre thing. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, if we just slow down and listen enough, they are so willing to tell us everything. They want to hide stuff from us.
Yeah, and I was having a chat online just this morning or last night about communication from the other side. They were saying, have you seen Sondra, Kristen was saying, have you seen Sondra and Rinaldi's work, who is, Sondra, who's got this sort of like using electronics to talk to the other side. And she was saying, communication between this realm and that realm is also up to the person communicating from there to here, as well as the psychic. So there is some skill in it. They have to have some skill to communicate as well, right? Do you want to
totally get behind Sonia on that one. Yeah, if they're good communicators like they were on Earth, maybe they're carrying that skill over. Or if they're really private, they might still latch on to that. I don't want to talk to a third party. I've had some spirits come in and they'll give me just little tiny things, and you could just see the look on their face. It's like, I don't want to tell you anything else. I don't know who you are. Why am I sharing this with you? And it's like, okay, you're holding on to that. That's good. No judgment, but your mother, your son, your whomever here wants to know more about this. So would you be willing? And sometimes it requires a little bit of psychology, get them comfortable, and you make a pact with them that you're not going to be sharing it with anybody else. And sometimes I'll say to them, listen, if I'm translating your message and it's not the way you want it translated, stop me. And I'm saying this to spirit, not people. Stop me and tell me that I've said a wrong word, and then I will repeat it. I will be as fast as you need me to be. Okay, sometimes that opens the door a little bit better. But you wouldn't think that would be the case with spirits, but it is.
Yeah, and also a lot of people have the misconception that once you've left the body, you're all love and light and an ascended master, right? And then,
Oh.
and you don't have that sort of grumpy personality where you would say, "No, I don't want to talk to you." Like you'd sort of be. So yeah, there's different levels that you can talk to too. Obviously,
Mhm.
there are some people who transition who are all love and light. Like I've spoken to many people on the show whose mother died, like Frances Key, who starts channeling through her from this collective and downloads 4 books and then the most incredible books you've ever read. So she was definitely love and light when she left her body, not sort of in that sort of grumpy, ego personality mind as well. So it just depends on the person and the work they've done here as well as the work they've done. Is that right?
Yes, totally agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. So as a psychic, contacting different levels of frequency, do you find that you can't sort of can you kind of hit all of them, or do you sort of tune in more to one particular level?
Oh, I like that question. I think the way that I've trained myself, since I've done this since I was a kid, was I really honed in on that deceased loved one level.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they were my friends. I saw them. They talked to me. I humanized them, and that's how I built that skill and made it okay for me. So when people come in and they say, I want to communicate to my angels and my higher self and this and that, I'm like, okay, I can do that, but you got to give me a minute. Like, I pause and I go, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a deeper end to go higher up, and I hit that next level. But that's not normally where I land when I do my intent and I start my readings. Like, I go to deceased loved ones level, if that makes any sense.
That
But I think
makes
you get it,
total sense.
right?
And that's so interesting because I see you as a teacher. And so that's really interesting to me because I don't land on the deceased loved one level. And I had this client who really wanted me to give her a reading from her deceased dad. And when I tuned into him, he was like at the end of this long hallway. And I sort of couldn't get to him. Like it's not my level. And so, I'd make a hell of a lot more money if it was my level. 'Cause seriously, I would, because that's the sort of level people want to speak to. Can you speak to my, mum, dad, brother, son,
Yes.
daughter who's
Yes.
passed over? But no, I don't land there. So I totally get it. And yeah, and I've often wondered, should I like hone my ability so I go to that level of the deceased loved one so that I get more work basically? And then my guides say, no, that's not your work. That's not your work. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So it's that teaching level that I go to where it's the collective, they teach. But you're there as well because you're always teaching from that level.
I love that. That's my favorite part. That's like my consciousness awake state, likes to live there. But then when I tap in to do my readings, I go to that place.
Yeah. And Grace, one of your guides, where does she live?
Mm.
Does she live in that sort of collective teaching level? Yeah.
She's up there somewhere. Boy, she challenges me to no end. Oh, we keep pointing up. If you're listening, we're like giggling and pointing to the sky for some reason. But yeah, Grace is up there. She's a counselor of some sort. And she really gives me great insight on the larger picture of what my voice or my education. And she really helps me step out of just communicating. And I say just for the identity of a location or a place, not to belittle it at all, but to be able to step back from communicating to deceased loved ones and get into the grander picture of how these instruments in these bodies work. You know, how do we create boundaries out of it? You know, communicating with energy. How do we use that to better our life and not have that end goal of, I wish there was a word for this, but actually not having the end goal of enlightenment? Because they giggle and they say, you know, when you keel over, when you leave this life, you're going to get there whether you have achieved it or not. So why are you working so hard to do it while you're choosing to be alive? So what's the difference? You know, living to the end goal of what you're going to get when you cross over, or the art of living, period.
Now that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I've had lots of chats with my mob about that. And they've said to me, because I've looked at different sort of groups, like I used to be married to a Hare Krishna, and you see the Hare Krishna group, and it predominantly attracts, you know, younger men. It's really interesting. Women as well, but predominantly men. And I've sort of looked at how different philosophies attract different people, different groups. And so there are some beings who come to Earth to have this physical environment, this dense physical environment, to achieve enlightenment in this environment. There are some, not my goal, but definitely groups of people, and that's their goal. And they talk about that a lot. And then there are others that come for other reasons. Some are coming in to like be a part of the shift. Some are coming in just to experience density, karma, whatever. So there's so many reasons to come here. But yeah, maybe the people that you're attracting, well, you're attracting the psychics, aren't you? The psychics and the New World teachers. Aren't you? People that want to hone their, when I say psychics, not the right word, but hone their intuitive abilities, their healing abilities. Like that's your tribe, right?
The intuitives, yes, the lumineers.
The lumineers. Yeah, I love the way. So maybe that's not they're not here to gain enlightenment. They're here to maybe navigate our intuitive abilities, because I just think that's where we're all going. And teachers like you and me, I suppose, are teaching people. You've got to make it normal. It's just got to be normal.
It's got to be a part of life. I think there's a point where you sacrifice so much of your human lifestyle to be the enlightened one that you stop enjoying being the human one, or as I call it, the emotional being. You know, we make all those sacrifices to what end? You know, you have to keep checking in. Is this really your level of enjoyment? Is this really what's floating your boat? And if it is, go for it. I will support you. I will carve you a paddle and hand it to you. But if it's not, and it's full of sacrifice to be the enlightened one and take the path that you think is the righteous one for you, you know, why are you being so hard and judgmental, and so why are you allowing so much pressure to guide your life? So I walk that fine line, and for me, the living in joy or bliss is my kind of enlightenment.
Absolutely.
So I think I attract those people, the ones that like to find the joy and the bliss and provide a little bit of laughter and giggle into this, and not place so much weight on the pressures of showing up and being just a solid human, or showing up and being total enlightenment in every definition of the sense.
Too much pressure. Just be here now. Okay, so it's been a few years since we've chatted. I've got quite a few questions for you just because of the
I love that.
conversations I've had on the show lately. But what's been happening with your Lighter Side network in the last few years? Because I think the last time we talked, it'd been about 6 months. You'd sort of pulled away from the Eric conversation. And we talked a lot about that because that's how I sort of found you, through Elisa's channel. So what's been happening? What's been going on, girl?
What's been going on? Oh my God, so much. I say we like I'm a collective, but I expanded the network. We now have podcasts as well as video casts, and we launched it free. We have no more subscription.
Oh,
and we are free to anyone who wants to see it. We have over 500 episodes, video and podcast combined.
So this is on YouTube and iTunes, I suppose, all those audio platforms?
Yes, our podcasts, our audio podcasts are on iTunes, but you can find all of them collectively at thelightersidenetwork.com. So head over there. We do trance channeling. We talk about wholeness living, mind, body, emotion, soul, mindfulness, sound healing, like all this stuff. And my passion with the network is taking those experts right out of the field so that you can see they're just like you. You know, they are mom, they are dad, they have kids, or they're single. Like they're just like you. Because I notice sometimes in our field that when they're published and they put them on tour and they put them up on stage, they kind of become the untouchable. And we see them as this success factor that doesn't necessarily match what we are successful in our lives as a nurse, as a teacher, as a lawyer, as a doctor, as whatever. And I wanted to show the average person out there that we have experts in this field that are also doing these jobs that you're doing. It makes it more real to life. And you can reach out and contact them on their Facebook page. You can email them. They reply to you and they can help you build your enlightenment or your wholeness lifestyle. So we have that, and that's out for free. We're on a bit of a sabbatical because I've decided to grow the center. So we've expanded our event space and we're having more in-person events now.
Cool.
It's been spectacular. And then we've had this big calling to take our in-person events online and live stream them. So I'm learning a whole new world of equipment. It's really like a one-woman show a lot of the times. So I show a lot of gratitude for the Lumineers' patience as I kind of dip into one area and out and kind of build them. And so right now we're working on the physical space, and then in come January 2020, we'll be back online with classes, back online with the network.
So when you say expanding, you're actually expanding the physical space as well, like you're getting more physical. Did you move, or this is just my personal inquiry? Because, you
Yeah.
know, I want to do what you're doing in Sydney. I want to do it. I've been given
Do
the,
it.
well, I've been given the vision. I just said to them, I've just watched so many people do it and fail.
Yeah, it's hard.
And I think I just said to my mob, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it and scrape pennies. I said, no, it has to be done right. So I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. Next year, maybe next year.
Oh
Anyway.
my gosh. You know, I'm an open book. If you ever want to talk about budgets and how things can succeed or how we do things over here, I share everything. In my world, there's no such thing as competition.
Yeah.
And to be able to say that, you have to live it. And
Yeah.
so when I see other people who are interested in what I do, I'm like, listen, I will talk to you about it, all honesty. And so it's really helpful because I feel like we need more of these centers around.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I remember I was years ago, part of a council on the Academy of Light. It was before the internet. And we were talking about expanding what we were doing, like we were just doing Monday meetings and having a meditation and a teacher and so on and so forth. And I saw this centers all connected all over the world. It was sort of like, yeah, it was just, I saw it. And I've had this vision that, you know, you're doing your center. What if you were a teacher, right? Oh, sorry, I'm getting into my own stuff now. But what if you're a teacher and you want to teach? But if
Mhm.
you're connected to all these centers all over the world, and you
Right?
can, yeah, it's like rather than the center just working on itself, like connect to, yeah, anyway, it's a bit of a vision I've had. We'll talk about it after the show. But yeah, we need to be all connected.
I
Yeah,
love that. We can have a
yeah.
teacher circuit as well as an online
Teachers
circuit.
circuit. Well,
Mhm.
like the music industry does. Like you're a musician, you go and play in different places. There's like a circuit, places where you go. Like it's the same thing, right? But
Book
except,
releases have it. You have your book
yeah,
tour. Colleges have it. You have a speaker college tour. Like, where's our
exactly.
health and wellness centered, connected tour?
Exactly. Ah, the vision I've had for a while. Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
Ditto. We're all waking up to this. We're
Wow.
slowly like
But you know,
collaborating.
it's interesting because I see this you know, conversation expanding, but is it expanding enough to sort of support that? It's kind of getting there. It's getting there. Like the fact that you've done it in Atlanta, Georgia, we discussed this last time, you know, in the Bible Belt,
Oh yeah.
is amazing that you've got this up and running and that you're getting people coming. But you must have seen in the last few years so many more people awakening and coming into this
Yes.
conversation,
Well, and
especially in your area.
so many people waking up and starting their own business with it. You know,
Right.
we've gotten a ton of entrepreneurs that find their way in and they're like, I don't know, I need office space, but, you know, nobody wants to rent to me because I'm in this field, or I'm not seen as stable. And my business partner and I at the time just decided, you know what, we're going to expand, and we're going to put our event center in another location, which is just across the hall. And we're going to take the 3,000 square foot we have now, and we divided it into offices. We have 14 entrepreneurial health and wellness, energy-based companies underneath the Center for Love and Light that are here actively practicing and succeeding.
So you have a co-working space like the hub.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Jamie, you are totally doing what I've been envisioning.
And this is what makes it work, though, is when you start bringing these companies in. But then sometimes you find they show up, they have such good work. Oh my God, they do such good work. But in the business area, they go, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I was told I need to not charge much. I was told I shouldn't brag or talk about myself that way because it's not healthy or good. And so we have to work with these belief systems and develop, and we've been hand-holding them. We call it boutiquing. We boutique their businesses to work for them so that they could work for the center.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been really fun.
That's happening a lot. That's happening a lot in Sydney with social entrepreneurs. Lots of people out there doing success and motivation coaching, that sort of level there. But this whole psychic energy healing thing, I think it needs to happen more with that as well. I had a girlfriend who was trying to get that up and running. I don't know if she got that happening. Anyway, we're at early days getting this sort of stuff up and running, like getting businesses out there that are like, yeah, if you're a healer, an energy healer or an intuitive or a reader, like having that as a normal, solid business. Yeah.
Yes, I love the word normal, solid business with an extraordinary ability. So I went ahead. It took me about 2 years to put this certification together, and I made it based on building your business. I call it the Verity Certification. Verity simply means a solid belief. So it begins with a belief in your natural ability and your belief in being an entrepreneur. And I have 8 experts, including myself, and 2 psychologists, and a marketing and branding specialist, and 1 doctor and 1 nutritionalist, and there's some others mixed in there. But I sat down and started looking at what made me successful. Okay, I've got a talent. Call it a talent, a gift, a natural ability. Everybody has a different word for it. For me, it was quite natural, but I just didn't know how to shape it to show up in the world, to normalize it, because people can look at us at a glance and just go, oh, I'm writing you off. That is so crazy. You are weird. You are woo-woo. I can't understand it. Because we're challenging people's belief systems and challenging people's religious belief systems at the same time. And that is very, touchy territory. Yeah.
I just want to throw this in. What would you say to people, because this is not something I get a lot, but it's something I've heard a lot. What would you say to people who say, you didn't go to university to learn this. It's a God-given gift. You should give it away free. It's from God. It should be free. You shouldn't charge for your psychic abilities, your reading abilities. Like, I've heard that a lot. I haven't had that personally. I've had it a couple of times, but what do you say to that?
I was about to ask, does that really happen down under?
Well, maybe I see it more in the States, but I have a big sort of American following. But it happens everywhere. There's a lot more sort of religious thing going on in the States than it's probably going on in Australia, but not in the area I live in, not in sort of Sydney, big city here where I live. But I've definitely heard that conversation. So what do you say to people like that who say you shouldn't charge? It's a God-given gift. You should give it away free.
Oh God.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's a long answer. No, it hits so many buttons for me because I am in the Bible Belt, and we do have a strong religious belief system. And I grew up with the words being put on me, that is a God-given gift. You shouldn't charge for it.
Right.
So my first thing is I ask them, so if I want to dedicate my life to my God-given gift, you're telling me that I am not to acquire any, financial support for that? And I clarify exactly what they're saying, because sometimes I think they're saying it because it's part of their routine. It's part of, they're indoctrinated with it. And I don't think they're really knowing the meaning of what they're saying. And so then I reiterate, so I have a family and I want to dedicate all of my time to this gift because I am so good at it, but I'm not to take any money. And sometimes they're like, well, you shouldn't charge a lot because you didn't have to study it. Okay. So the artist that innately knew how to express themselves and make pottery or hang things on the wall that sometimes charge $2,000, $5,000, upwards to $30,000 for a piece of art, that's okay for them? And they go, well, yes, because they probably went to school. And I go, the majority of artists that we have out there maybe did some schooling, but did everything on their own. Oh, well, it's just, that's different. And I'm like, how is it different? You're affected by what I do. You take something away from it, and I'm not here to change your belief system, but you're still saying I shouldn't receive anything in trade for it. A fair energy exchange, nothing. And usually by the time I walk them through those kind of questions, they're stumbled. They stumble over themselves and they go, well, I guess it's just that I don't understand why you're doing it. And so many people take advantage of other people's grief and pain and, and they're not doing good things with it. And I said, okay, so it sounds like you've been wounded or by some other experience, or that you've seen this on TV or heard it from somebody else, but maybe you haven't been in it yourself. And then another story will come out. And I take the time and sit with it, unless they're yelling at me. I get it where they're very, very angry.
Really?
You're lining your pockets with my money. That is a direct quote. I laugh because it was uncomfortable. I don't laugh because of their pain over it. It was really hurtful. And I want nothing more to help somebody. And I do a lot of volunteer time, and the public doesn't really know that because I don't stand up on a mountaintop and say, I've given away 30 hours this week. I've done X amount of readings for free because this person really needed it, or that company, or this. It discounted my services so much. So I have a budget that I look at and how much volunteer time I can do and how many discounted readings to sustain the center, the network, my family, because I'm the sole provider. And that's a formula that you really have to learn yourself and get comfortable with. And, as they're yelling at me, I tell them, I understand you have a very different relationship with money and belief systems.
Yeah.
It's not mine, but I hear that you are angry and that you want this service, but you feel like you can't afford it. Yes. So why do you do this? And I'm like, listen, I am structured in a way that I'm comfortable with. If you are not comfortable with this, we have other people in our community that don't charge these same prices, and I would love to forward you their name, their information. I don't want you to stop here on your journey. And it kind of throws them off that I actually still want to help them. They really want to tear me apart.
Wow.
And they're hurting. So what do you do? And these are muscles that you don't get trained for in business school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need to be, yeah, absolutely. I suppose more in America, but you need to be trained to meet those sorts of questions. That's where the training comes in. Because otherwise, if you're a sensitive, intuitive, and then someone's yelling at you, you shouldn't be judging. You'll just recoil and then just not do it and go back to your day job. Just like,
yes, you're like, I pulled out the sage and the crystal and I lit everything and I said all the right words and they're still attacking me. Why?
Too hard. I'll just go back and work at Starbucks or something.
It's so true, though.
Oh,
It's so true.
God.
So the larger part.
I have
Yeah,
actually
go
seen a
ahead.
couple of that comments like that on YouTube about you way back when about, yeah, why did she charge? So maybe that's where that's coming from. But I have had it too. And, as somebody who does read, and it is so natural, there's this fine line of boundaries, that once you start tapping into somebody, it's just all this information. It's like, oh, pull it back, pull it back, pull it back, and then getting them to actually come and see you and not give it all away in a party situation. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I just did that
Yes.
the other night. This, funnily enough, I get a lot of psychologists and learned, doctors who come to me who've done all this study and they really want to help people, but they haven't opened their intuitive psychic abilities enough to, like, because they're still in the logical mind, they really want to do that. So they spent years and years of study and working in that environment, but they want to go further. And that's when they sort of reach out to someone like you or me to sort of, open. It's so interesting, but they're already set up as the therapist, as, they've already got those boundaries, that relationship with people. You're going to come, I'm a psychologist, you're going to pay me for my learned advice. So once they become psychic, they're already kind of set up. It's really interesting. It's really interesting how that works.
Yeah, I often thought it would have been so nice to be trained in life coaching or counseling, social work, but I found nonviolent communication, the compassionate communication technique, has been rock solid, especially managing people who are upset at what your costs are, being able to stay in an environment that's hostile, but you're able to protect yourself. So then you don't want to revert and go back to something that's more comfortable because your passion is reading people and working with energy. So there's a fine line there. Another thing that always comes to mind too when people are upset and they say, well, you didn't study this. Well, because there's not a college for it. Trust me, if there was, I probably would have signed up for it. There is now, you can go for crystal healing, things of that nature. And I'm so thrilled about it. But, I'm 46. I just invested 46 years of my life managing this ability, communicating with them. And I've done the self-work. And I think that's why my business is healthy, because I've done therapy. I know who I am. I know where my limitations are. I know what my boundaries are. I know when I am putting myself in the reading, and I know how to call it quits and be like, oh, Jamie, no, you don't belong there. The hardest work with being a medium or a reader for me is being neutral and being on the fence and hearing things that would just normally send me through a roof or, bring me to tears, and just stay absolutely in the game without any skin involved.
Without, the emotional reaction. Yes, that's a skill. Like, that's a skill. Yeah, I've seen that a lot with readers. They hit something and then their own belief systems kick in, and now they're in opinion. They're absolutely, you see it on all those shows on television, those psychic reading shows. You see that all the time. They're in their opinion based on their beliefs about life. And you see that a lot.
Because they have an agenda to educate someone or make them see the world that the reader is seeing or how they lived their life, and that's not your job.
It's interesting. I've chatted with my mob about channeling and trance channeling and the difference. Like, when I saw channelers years ago, I have never done trance channeling, and I don't know if I ever will do it. But I've said to them, like, why do you do this trance channeling thing? Why can't the personality sort of hang around? And they said, because the personality totally gets in the way.
See?
And their opinions get in the way. And if we can get that personality out of the way, then we can come through with more clarity, still using the human mind and parts of the personality, obviously, and the vocab, but we can come through with more clarity if you can get that personality out of the way. And I go, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I think I was asking them about Edgar Cayce, because he was called the sleeping prophet. And people that are, I've spoken to a lot of channelers who are not aware of anything that's happened. And when they come back into their body, it's like, what did you talk about? That's always fascinated me. But when you're trance channeling, do you like leave the building? Do you go off, or do you know what's being spoken?
I don't know what's being spoken anymore.
Right.
When I first started practicing it, I did. I could feel my mouth, my jaw moving. I could hear the words, but it was like the words were underwater, and it was very upsetting. Like I was trying to control it or stop it or get too close to it, and it would quit because I wanted to be engaged. And finally there was one time where time was lost. It's like I fell asleep and I woke up and I looked around the room and I was like, did it work? Like, did we do this? And they were like, 2.5 hours just went by. What do you mean, did it work? Like, we all got readings. I was like, what? So
Wow.
that was a shocker. And I think that worked really well for me. So it was just a repeat button. I teach people how to get there, but if you're not comfortable with surrendering your body, that kind of deep trance channeling is not going to happen, but you can get it to where you share space. And I've heard from Spirit share the same thing of how it's so much easier just to trance channel, like get out of the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I'm too much of a control freak to leave the building. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I don't know. I don't know if I want to.
Colleen, my assistant, sent me a text today and she was like, Regina's cats came back. I was like, okay. Like, I didn't know that they were missing. And then Colleen texted back. She goes, oh my God, I think she said that to Maitland when you were trance channeling. Somebody took her cats. They just returned them today. And I was like, oh, happy ending. It's a little unnerving, because, yeah, that was my body. You were looking at me, but I don't get to retain that information that went out, that came
Absolutely.
in. So it's a little weird.
Absolutely. Ah, interesting. Okay, where are we going with this conversation? So many places we can go. I've been kind of obsessed just the last couple of nights with Red Table Talks. Have you seen Red Table Talks?
I've
With
heard it. I have not seen it.
Well,
Loving it?
I am loving it. You know what I'm loving about it? I'm loving that it's reaching 10 million people because
Nice.
it's a conversation about accountability, forgiveness, race. Oh, so it's juicy. It's so great. I shouldn't be plugging Red Table Talks on this show, but I just kind of see your show doing the same thing, really. You have those. It just reminded me of your show, but your show's what I'd love to see on Red Table Talks is having this conversation to 10 million people. But
Right.
but they're getting in there, they're talking about, forgiveness and just so many important things that need to happen across the collective. Yeah, I was watching it last night and thinking, it would be interesting if they got Jamie Butler on there talking about, they talk about intuitive and they hit those places, but they don't dive in deep. And I was thinking, it would be cool if they could really dive in deep, talking to 10 million people. Yeah.
Anyone? Maybe they can work that for us.
Well,
That's really cool. I'll definitely start watching that. I'm always into looking for any kind of platform, whether it's a podcast or video cast, that's not just talking to somebody, but maybe challenging them to get into how they're feeling and how
right.
those feelings power up your perspective in your life.
So Jada Pinkett is, it's reaching 10 million people because it's celebrity, and we're obsessed with celebrity in our society. But Jada Pinkett, well, I was watching about mental health, and this is a conversation in our community that's really big because empaths or psychics who don't understand that they have it's called mental health problems. Many of them, so many of the crazy people are just unbelievably empathic or psychic, and they don't understand how to navigate that. She was having this conversation with some other rapper celebrity, and she was talking about her depression. But what's really interesting, I've always said depression is when you're not living on purpose. It's when you're not fulfilling your soul's plan.
Mm.
You're feeling your ego plan. So she is a total um, example of being beautiful and rich and famous and fabulous and having the family, having all the trappings, everything that we think that we're supposed to succeed in this lifetime. But it wasn't until she started doing Red Table Talks, when she started giving and doing, her soul's
Mm.
calling, that depression and mental health thing fell away, and now she's happy. And yeah, that's a conversation we need to have
That's
more of in the collective. That
big time.
Yeah,
Not to keep throwing back to the Verity certification, but the psychologist and the social worker that I have in the 7-month certification, they're going to talk about mental health and the fine line between mental disease and a spiritual awakening.
right,
It is so subtle of a difference. A
right.
spiritual awakening can feel like a mental breakdown, but it's coming from a very healthy core. And when you're in it, it's sometimes extremely difficult to see that healthy core. Mental breakdown is coming from a very unhealthy or unhealthy place. And often when people are coming to see us, and I'm sure you can validate that, is they're having one or the other and they don't know what to do. And they've maybe sought help elsewhere and they immediately just wanted to call it mental illness and here's some medicine and scoot along the way. And sometimes they go to someone else who's maybe more in the spiritual spectrum where they say, oh, you got to meditate and you got to do these things. And there's nobody kind of neutral enough that has the education of mental health versus spiritual awakening. So we're going to put in a lot of hours in going over symptoms and signs and how to assist and help, and know who to call when it is mental health disease.
Mm.
Because we know CPR, that's big in the States. Oh, somebody's choking, here's what you do. 911, great. But mental illness isn't that immediate kind of a call to action. It's a slow twerking, and rise and fall of imbalance. So what do you do then? You're like, oh, it's fine now, but it won't be fine in 5 minutes, or it won't be this. So we're going to educate people. Who do you call? How do you handle that person? How do you care for them and care for yourself first and foremost while you're in that situation? It's really important.
Mm. My best friend committed suicide when she was in her 30s.
Mm.
She had a breakdown. And I think it was probably more of a spiritual awakening that she didn't know how to handle. Because when we were really young, when we were in our 20s, we went to see this channeler, right? And the channeler, and I was really keen to sort of know about this stuff and do this stuff. Like I was keen as mustard. And she was not at all. She wanted to, be fabulous, be rich, be famous, all that sort of stuff that we all want. And this channeler said to her, you can do what I do. And I was so pissed off. I'm like, but you don't want to do that. I want to do that. You don't want me. But she ended up killing herself when she was like in her mid-30s. Yeah. But so it's an interesting conversation, the difference. I had just went to a girlfriend's birthday party, and she did a bit of a sharing about her life, and she talked about her dark night of the soul. And then she explains that she had this liquid energy run up through her spine, and I'm like, oh, you had a Kundalini experience. And it just her world fell apart, because like Kundalini kicks in and you're not the same person, and she didn't know how to operate as the same person. So again, she saw it as her dark night of the soul, but it was just an activation. It was like her Kundalini kicked in, and she went from being more me focused to more we focused, and now she facilitates these events in Sydney, and she's created amazing conscious community, and she's amazing. And it all sort of started with that experience that she calls her dark night of the soul. So it's interesting.
That's beautiful.
Because you feel like you're going crazy, but you're
Oh,
not.
yeah.
You're just like changing paradigms, shifting paradigms from it's all about me to it's all about we, really, isn't it?
Yes, coming away from the head and getting down into the heart.
Yeah.
And becoming more sensitive. And sensitive is not a weakness. Vulnerability is not an open sign of you're not healthy and you're not going to survive. In fact, I think it's the most strength bound, strongest kind of emotion that we can do. So
Yeah.
we're getting there. Humanity is getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so I've had a few conversations on the show lately about upcoming earth changes. I'd love to know what your guides say about that. Have you been sort of discussing the future with your mob?
With your mob. I love this.
I call them my mob.
That's good stuff. Yeah, it does pop up every now and then, especially how the Earth once again is changing that heartbeat rate. And when that heartbeat rate bursts, it gets a little bit faster, boy, the sensitivity in the people, it translates into anxiety, stress. I got to be somewhere, I got to do something, but I don't know what the hell it is.
Right.
I got to go and I got to go and I got to go and I got to do this, but there's no end in sight, because you're translating the energy from the earth and claiming it yours rather than just processing it and giving it back. So I think this whole new movement that's coming, if we speaking global, is a move away from corporations. I think there's going to be what I've been shown is that there's going to be better sight from the what do we call us? The people who buy the things. It's not the market. Consumers.
Customers,
Thank you.
consumers. Yeah.
That the consumers understand more about the value in a good product, how it's made, what it's made with, where it's made, how it's shipped, starting to look at CO2 emissions. And it doesn't really come around to save the planet. It's not about global warming. It's almost like that term has been tainted. And so when you hear it, half the people have been trained to tell you it's bullshit, and the other half of the people are like, it's real. Why can't you just look at numbers, please? So the next movement is educating the consumers about the products that they have and that they're buying. And that's going to switch from conglomerate back to this kind of ma and pop style where things are more localized, where you know who's making it, where it's coming from, hand designed, handmade, organic, that kind of a field. And then I think we're going to grow all over again in what it means to import and export. So these big wars of signing, the contracts from import, export between our countries and your countries and so forth, I think is going to go a little haywire and a little crazy, and it's going to scare a lot of people. But in the end, I think it's about simplifying. That's a lot that what's been coming through. I mean, there's more to it, but that's skimming the surface.
Yep, that's something that has come through with some of the conversations I've talked about, definitely. It's something that Penny Kelly wrote about in the Robes books 40 years ago, that were predicted from her little mob. She called little because they were like little men in brown robes. What about earth changes, like weather? Like, we're on fire here in New South Wales. So New South Wales is a state of Australia, for those people that don't know. And we are on fire. Like, there are thousands of fires all over the state at the moment. And I know that California had some horrific fires again. Like, we're burning, and everyone's talking about it all over the news, saying, we always get bushfire season in Australia. It's a dry, hot land. And
it's different.
This is different. It's early, it's much bigger, it's different. So what have your mob said about sort of earth changes and weather patterns and things like that? Anything? Have you had any insights on that?
Not so much. They have briefly talked about certain ecosystems changing. So, and even like my eye has been on the Amazon. I'm a tree girl.
Yeah.
Love my trees.
Another fire, huge fires. Yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to, calm me down. Like, hey, this isn't the end of this. Like, everything is still okay, even though you're watching all this devastation. Everything is still okay. And when you think it's hit a tipping point, it's still going to be okay. Things aren't going to be reversible back to where we came from, but they are going to do a tipping point to land up in a different structure. And it's not a doom and gloom story, but it's a story that I can't really wrap my head around, maybe because I'm so involved with being on Earth, but that some of our climates are going to shift. People will be okay. I know I've been hearing a lot about water rising and some regions being new deserts, and people, it's like the migration of survival. It's a slow shift.
That's so interesting what you're saying, maybe because I'm a part of it. Because I've had a bit of, I've been having conversations on the show, and I've been chatting to my Bob, and it's like I'm in a human body, so I'm invested in things going well. Is that interfering with being able to really tap into what's going on? Because I have what I want, and then there might be what will happen. So that's a conversation I've been having with myself too. So I'm kind of in the, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know.
There's a beauty to not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? That ignorance is bliss, and ignorance is not a stupidity thing. There's this, if we're in bliss, then we're going to be creating more bliss-like energy. So there's something to be said about not having all the knowledge.
Yeah.
It's another little thing. But yeah, I think we do interfere because we are invested.
We're invested in things going well. Yeah, we want everyone to be happy and healthy and loving life, and we don't want earth changes to wipe out half the planet. No, it doesn't sound like a good plan. Anyway, what about some of the chat? Because I know you've got some amazing channelers and readers and stuff, on your show, your podcast shows and stuff. Have they been talking about it at all? Any of the information been coming through them?
A lot of what they're talking about now is the 3D to 5D shift.
Right.
The evolutionary change of what's happening in the physical body. That's the big thing. And so it does blow my mind a little bit. And it is, getting back to that, like how your friend had the little Kundalini awakening, where she went from the I to the we. And how you fall away from your head and your thinking and you get into your heart and you maneuver your life through how you feel rather than how you think, which can be a big mind boggle. Like it can really just tear some stuff up. But how that changes everything energetically. So that's the big talk over here, how we're not only evolving to a 5D, so using more of our ethereal and energetic body, but how we're able to heal the physical body. So we're going to see a movement away from traditional medicine. So that means that the traditional structures around hospital, around how doctors are paid, how prices are, XYZ in certain places, all that's going to crumble a little bit and be challenged. And I think that's going to shake a lot of people.
Oh, Jamie, that has to be challenged. That just has to. The sickness industry, I was driving some friends to a meeting the other day and I drove past this brand new hospital, you know, billion-dollar structure, massive, huge, beautiful brand. And I said to them, look how much money we invest in sick care. If only that money could be invested in well care. This massive structure to house all these sick people and, yeah, operate on them. And I don't know. I mean, it's fair enough we need to fix broken bones and everything like that. Be great. I see a future. You see those movies where you lie on a bed and you go, and broken bones just like.
Yes. And they mend because of that light or this thing. That is absolutely, to me, when I think about it, it sounds absolutely woo-woo and just completely science fiction. But I'll tell you right now, absolutely possible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely possible.
Yep.
Some of the things I've seen with my own energy healing that I've done for other people.
Well, tell us. Give us some stories. Come on, stories.
Story time. Gather around, children. No. I had the opportunity of being with someone. They had it's called a green break. So like a toothpick break. It doesn't snap, the bone doesn't snap in half, but it snaps enough where it's really not looking pretty. And my instinct was to put my hands on it and heal it. And we get to the hospital and lo and behold, it has mended itself to the point where the doctor said, how long have you had this break? And we're like, oh, we just kind of came here. How long have you had the break? Well, not that long. He's like, we have to re-break it to set it and then put a cast on it. Because back then you put these big casts and you wrap all that stuff around it. And I felt horrible because it's not something I thought of. Oh, set the bone first. And I don't know how to do that, so I wouldn't have done it anyways. I just went into the healing mode while it was all wonky. So there's been things like that. I've worked with a wonderful woman in New York who had breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was aggressive breast cancer. And she decided she was not going to lose her breast. She wasn't going to do it. And I was doing Reiki in a spa. It was the first time it was kind of in a spa setting, like taught. It was in the 90s. And she showed up. She goes, I've heard about this treatment. I want it from you. And I said, okay, well, here's what I need. I need you to come every day. And I need you for at least an hour. And we're going to do this, for extended amount of time. She goes, I'm in. And she would bring her x-ray and she would put it up in the window and she'd go, okay, here it is. It's like a silver dollar. And I said, okay, which is silver dollar. How big is that? 1.5 inches around, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
You don't do inches either.
Yeah,
so,
but we understand them.
You understand them?
Yeah.
It's not the great,
Most people. Maybe if you're under 25, you don't. But anyway, go on.
Then 2 weeks later, she'd come and she'd bring it up and it would be the size of a quarter. And she goes, it has to be the size, I think it was a dime, before they would do surgery on it and remove it and keep her breast. And so she had it in the mindset, it's got to be a dime. And we would do Reiki. My hands would be candy apple red and they would burn. And when you're working energy with bones, burns, cancers, it feels like it's on fire and it's not a comfortable thing. She would lay down the table and just kind of weep. And she says, it hurts. And I go, I know, just stay with me. Just please don't stop. One day she came in and she slapped up her x-ray and it was the size of that dime. And she started crying and she goes, I was passed for surgery today. I wanted to come and show you this. And I wanted to thank you. I never saw her again after that. But if she hadn't brought in consistently those x-rays, I don't
Yeah.
think I would have believed what was going on, because I can't really see into the skin. Energetically, you can see the cancer and the misplacement and the blockages, but to get the visual proof of it. And her doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Yes.
She was like,
Yes.
great.
That visual proof. It's so interesting working with people's belief system, because, she could have had a belief that I have the ability with your help to eradicate it. But no, the belief was we just need to shrink it so I can have the operation. So it's really interesting where her limits were on, like, I'm going to
Yes.
believe in this to this point, but I'm not going to go further. My belief won't let me, allow me to have complete healing, but it'll allow me to have enough healing so I can have an operation. That's
Right. She
fascinating.
prioritized what the doctor said to her. He said,
Right.
we can't operate on it. It's too big. It has to be this big. And she adopted that. Well, I'm going to get it that big for you. And it gave her that structure that she needed to achieve it. I think if he didn't say that, she would have been able to do what you just said, open it up and really
Yeah, but
eradicate the whole thing.
she gave the doctor the authority, and not the authority to the ability
I
of her
know.
body to heal her. Like, her body can do it. She just has to get out of the way, like a trance channeler. Get out of the way and let the body do what it does best. Just get out of the way. I know. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I started to believe in all this years ago. I was talking to some people that had been to John of God, the healer in Brazil. And I was
Yes.
at a dinner, and I remember this man was telling me this story about he had always had sinus problems. And he went to John of God, and he was just sitting in meditation. And he had this experience where his face swelled up like a balloon, and he looked like a balloon for a week or so. And then when it came back down, he said all the bones in his face had been readjusted. His glasses fitted completely differently on his face, like they had just restructured his bone system in meditation, just
That
sitting
is
in I
fantastic.
know, and I'm thinking, wow. And in saying that, not long after that, I fell down some cement stairs and cracked
Mm.
my arm. Went in, had a look at just a hairline fracture, but just did the same thing, just lay in meditation. I was in pain like unbelievable. So I just sort of knocked myself out in that I went to sleep, and then woke up the next day, and it had healed. I mean, I have no proof of that because I have no x-rays, but I had proof once when I was asking Spirit to give me some proof, like, show me, show me. And my
Hmm.
daughter cut herself on her foot, and I threw her on the, I was in the shower at the time, I threw her on the toilet and just thought, I'm just going to put my hands on it to stop the bleeding. And what I noticed was when I put my hands on it, I expected to feel the blood on my hand. So I took my hand off immediately and thought, where's the blood? And it had healed.
Sealed. It's incredible, isn't it?
And
I
both of
love
us looked at her foot and went,
mouths dropped, right? Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's story
Belief,
after story. Yes.
story after story, but it comes down to that belief. Like, do you believe it's possible? Like, yeah, can you open to that? Yeah, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Like earlier this year, I'm building a treehouse in my backyard. And I went to go get some wood from the local hardware store, and I climbed up to grab the wood and jumped off wrong and rolled my foot and jumped back up. And I was like, I'm just one of those people. It's okay. Let's keep going. Got the rest of the wood, got home, and I was like, my foot's really hurting. So I did Reiki. I did Reiki that day, that night, that next morning, on and off. I'm still walking on it. It's fine. I do Reiki on it for a whole week. And I'm like, it's still a little sore, but no swelling, no discolorization, but it's like, something's not right. So I went and got it x-rayed. I broke it.
You
But
broke it.
yeah, but doing that Reiki for the whole week, daily doses kept it at bay. Like it was healing, but I was constantly walking on it and using it, and it didn't get that rest that it needed to heal properly. So then I had to get in the boot and everything. And my family was just laughing so hard. Like, your Reiki kept you walking on a broken foot for over a week. And I moved. I like packed my, family's house in Florida into a U-Haul and drove the U-Haul, and just like, it wasn't a non-active week. We were crazy. So
Sounds
that's
like you were working too hard, Jamie, and you needed a break.
right. Give me a break. Don't give me a break. I
Give
don't
me a
need
break. Give me a break.
any more breaks like that.
Yeah, we've got to stop saying that. Give me a break. It's like, really?
Yeah,
Is that what you
somebody's
really want?
listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it didn't stop you. So interesting. It didn't stop you.
Mm-mm. Imagine we're limitless in what we can do. If we had that as a toolkit, a lot of us, I think now can completely get on board with the intuitive thing. Oh yeah, gut instinct. Oh yes, yes, I am smart in this area, or I just have that ability to claircognizantly know these things, or I'm slight of an empath. So we got the words now kind of in the common day-to-day language, but I don't think we have the practice of it yet.
Yeah.
So they're thinking it's kind of like, if I need a cake, I'm going to pull the recipe out, I'm going to make it, and then I can eat it. We're good. When really it's like breathing. We don't just decide one day we need to breathe and smell something yummy. It's happening all the time. And there's a practice in that. We have to pump in and out. Like it is kind of involuntary. Our intuitive body, our energetic body is involuntary as well. It's taking in information constantly from inanimate objects, from people, animate objects, from past, present, future. And I don't think that we're practicing how to hone in on what we need from that and use it to be better at whatever we're looking at being better at. So we get caught up and we go, okay, well, now I need it today. And I really need this answer. Does he love me? Does he not? Is this the right decision? Is this where I need to be in college and what I need to do in my career? Tell me yes or no. And then all of a sudden the answer doesn't come and they think, oh, I suck at this. And they demanded it for that one instant and couldn't get it to show up. But what if they were actually in the practice of that relationship with their intuitive body or their energetic body, and then they really needed that answer just once? It would come in with flying colors. It would just be this ease of, I now know what to do because I'm embodying it. I get it. And you move forward. In fact, if you probably had that practice, you wouldn't even need to be asking the questions because your life would be at this point of ease. Always.
You're in the
Always is a big
flow.
word to use. Yeah, you're in the flow.
Flow.
That's the word. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what happens next. You just know there's going to be an answering to whatever you're thinking about next and next and next. So it wouldn't it be nice if that happens? That'll happen next and next and next. It just fat flows. Yeah. It's just, yeah, you don't have this. Oh, I remember I was so like that. Why? Especially around career. I used to go to psychic after psychic after psychic asking, what am I here to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And everyone had a different opinion, but it was their opinion. It was their opinion, not necessarily guidance. I mean, not to say that they weren't good psychics, but it was their opinion. Yeah, they all had different opinions. Yeah, but that need to know, yeah, it's so hard to sort of have any answers when you're in that vibration of I need to know. You're just locked out of the answers, aren't you? Even when you go to a psychic, you can't even hear what they say because you're
That's
so in the questioning mind.
that's very true.
You
So
know, when you do readings for people, people ask you and you give them the answer, and then they ask you the same question in a different way. And then you give them the answer and they ask you the same question. And then they still come away confused, like, no, still, because they're so in the questioning. The, the answers can be slapping them upside the face and they just can't get it. They just don't get it. I'm sure you've experienced that in readings, haven't you?
a lot. I love I had one today again, a different session where uh, the woman was asking the same different questions, but it had the same undertone.
Theme, yeah.
It was the same undertone. And her team is so polite. They were such beautiful people. And they would answer and they'd wait. And she'd ask another one and and they did this for a little bit. And finally they looked at me and they were like, okay, we're going to talk about the undertone. And they were like, sit down. And for about 10 minutes, they were like, listen, here's your perspective. And we're able to identify that because you came here, 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 and here. It's all the same. Now, if we can change the perspective, all of a sudden you'll be able to acknowledge what the answers are and how to move. And they asked her if she understood. They explained it in 3 different ways and then did a little metaphor. And I was like, that was the most beautiful thing.
Oh, that sounds great.
And so she was able to go, I get it. I'm going to work on this perspective back here first. And then I'll start trying on the answers that they gave. She was, I think that feels better. It's like, oh, great. So there's moments like that where you're like, yeah, I know that wasn't me. There's no way I'd be that clever and think of those things, or even to acknowledge the undertone of a question. Like, there's so much happening, during a session.
Yeah. It was like I was telling you about that client I had who wanted me to speak to her dead father. And I couldn't access him. Not really. He was at the end of this long haul. But her guides were coming through, telling her why she was here, talking about who she was, what she was doing here, and she couldn't hear any of it because it's like, but can you see my father? And it's like,
Hmm.
well, no, not really. But your guides are saying this. But has my father got a message for me? It's just like, so she couldn't hear anything because she had this like, is my father there for me? Yeah. So it was. I told her to go and see another psychic who does that because I don't do that. But yeah, but it's just like hitting a brick wall when this unbelievable information's coming through, hitting a brick wall. Yeah. Anyway, I've gone off track again. I don't know. Well, we could chat all day. But where are we? We've been yakking for over an hour. I know you have to go. You've got kids and family. There's so much we could talk about. I'm passionate about people understanding their empathic abilities. I had some friends staying with me from the States, and there was this beautiful young girl that came who was just such an amazing empath. And but she was suffering from it. I'd love to send her to you to do your courses. They live in Salt Lake City, which is a bit far from you, but you do it. Do you do it online?
Yes, my basic and intermediate mediumship classes are online. I know Colleen keeps my assistant's like, we need to rename those things because it's like a energy one-on-one 101, for the basics, like how do you identify it, how do you see it, how do you use it, how do you perceive it, and where are your belief systems, where are your boundaries. So it's all these checks and balances, and then your homework is to go out and explore it and engage with it. And then the intermediate mediumship is, how do you get the information from the energy, how do you translate. So then you look at, how do you hear information, where do you get in, where do you interfere with it, and why. And then we look at what's the easiest way for you to get that information, and we try on different things. So you have that homework. The advance is in person in Atlanta, and that's, we practice the channeling aspect of energy
Mm-hmm.
to get the information through. So that's pretty intensive. But the first two are online. And if you're starting your own business in the health and healing and energy field, and you're an entrepreneur, the Verity Certification is incredible. It's a 7-month process. It's all online. It's done in little bites so that you can still have your career and have a family and not have to sacrifice your evenings or your weekends. So we squeeze in little things so that you can take breaks and do the coursework and show up. Um, that's January through July. That's online, yes, so you can be anywhere. And Reiki is in person. That I'm still very old school. I'm quite traditional with my Reiki teaching.
Oh, so you still teach Reiki?
Hmm.
Ah, interesting. I didn't know you did that. Okay. Or energy healing. I don't know. Reiki sort of puts it in a box, but it's energy healing. I
Oh,
remember when I
yes.
did Reiki, God, 35 years ago, I had this thought, and I was so not religious. Ah, this is what Jesus did.
Right, but that's how they like to teach it here in the States.
Really?
Hmm.
Oh, because it was
That was,
very Japanese traditional, very like strict. It was secret. You couldn't tell anybody you were doing it. You couldn't give anybody the little, symbols. It was all very secret back in the day when I did it. It was all very
yeah,
secrecy and it
ditto.
very sort of strict Japanese. And it was this Japanese philosophy, and it didn't sort of have any flavors of religion or Jesus or anything. But I had this thought, ah, this is what Jesus did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We added the Jesus talk and the Christianity belief when it came to the States so that people could see it more. And so when I teach, I'll teach it the way that I was taught, the traditional way, with the Christian flair, and then the more modern, and kind of challenge people to look at the history and why it was translated that way and why it works. Not to, downplay any sort of it.
I think Reiki must have expanded exponentially since I did it. I think there's a whole lot bigger conversations than the one I had many years ago. Yeah, that just introduces a whole lot of other sort of energy healing philosophy. I think I don't know. I don't because I sort of
No,
the banner of Reiki I just see this like the chokure, all these little symbols, just this Japanese philosophy. Is that the way you teach it?
I teach it very straight up traditional.
Mm-hmm.
Just I teach it straight up like that, and kind of where Dr. Yusui came from, but more I'll educate that way, and then I'll educate about your chakra system and your energetic body and why it's working. And then I like to pull out pendulums and dowsing rods to show them visually what each symbol is doing and how it bursts in energy and how it can be used. And then we link it back to belief systems,
Yeah.
word choice, belief, all just everything, perspective. So it helps solidify it, makes it your own when you leave rather than you following a system to make it work. Because I think if we keep following a system, we are not listening to ourselves anymore.
Absolutely.
So not that it's all anarchy, but please prioritize yourself first. You're number one.
Yeah, which was how I was taught. You had to follow these rules and you had to follow this system. You had to do it that way. And that's why I say I think that since then it's really kind of loosened and expanded. And we weren't talking chakras and all that sort of stuff back then. But yeah.
No, not a word. Like, was yours like this where they came in and the first attunement, right? They're like, close your eyes. Do not open your eyes. You could not open your eyes. And I was like, oh my God, they didn't tell you anything what was happening. They're blowing on you. They're touching you. It was really creepy. I was freaking out. I'm a young girl in a room of strangers. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. And then they give you some symbols, like the second go around. Okay, level 2. And we had to have 21 days in between. We had to have so many hours of practice. It was very like diligent. And then with the symbols, they give you a piece of paper and they'd help, and they'd look at your strokes and how you moved your hand and how many times and if it was wrong. And then at the end, I was like, oh, these are beautiful. I can't wait to take these home. They collected everything. You left with nothing. It was only by word of mouth and your memory. And I was like, oh my God, this dyslexic kid, I'm not going to remember any of this. I remember finding a pen in my car and then pulling my sleeve back and immediately trying to draw all over my arm because I couldn't find a piece of paper. And I was like, please don't let me forget these things.
Yes, it was like that. We didn't paint them, but yeah, we did draw. Yes, it was very secretive back then. It was all very secretive, which is something why I sort of dissed it. I went on to do Reiki 2 and 3, but I just thought this whole secrecy thing, I was just, no, I'm not up for that. I just like this back then, it was still how I feel today. It's like, let's expand this knowledge. Let's get this out of the closet, for God's sake. That's how I felt.
Yes.
I do remember there was a couple, we were just people lying on the floor, we were just sort of raking them. And he was a chiropractor. He was a bit of a skeptic, but he had a chiropractic adjustment. I remember, just lying on the floor doing nothing. And I thought, oh, this stuff actually might work. I remember that. Like, oh, maybe there's something in this. Because I think I did it just out of interest. And then when I saw that, I thought, maybe there's something into this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. It's a good first aid kit, basic first aid kit knowledge.
Yeah, I use it on myself all the time still. Yeah. I don't use the symbols. I just ask my mob to I just put my hands, I just say, do what you need to do. I'll get out of the way. Just readjust this. Thank you. Anyway, we've got to go. Any last things you'd like to leave with people before we say goodbye?
I could say so much. First of all, I just want to thank you for maintaining your show and putting these like-minded people in front of the camera and getting this content out to people. It's so important. And I like how you make it conversational. For me, that's how I learn the best. And you let me laugh when we talk. Like, I don't feel any stress showing up to be with you. And that's an incredible sign of an interviewer. Like, thank you.
Well, it's interesting. Everyone calls them interviews, but I don't like to call them interviews because, it's exactly what you say. They're conversations, and I never write down. I had no idea what we were going to talk about. I said to Colleen, "I've got no agenda. Is there something Jamie wants to talk about? Let's talk about it." But I show up like I show up to a conversation. You go to a party, you have a conversation with people, you explore each other's belief systems. You open up to a conversation, and that's like how I like to do the shows because that's life, right?
And it makes magic.
Yeah, it makes magic. It makes magic.
For anybody listening, the Lumineers, people who shine light is what I call them, that at any point that they hear something or heard something in this podcast or it sparked their curiosity, I really like to encourage you to write that down and to follow through with it, to research it. Don't let it stop here. You're looking for growth, enlightenment, expansion, whatever the word is. The way that you're going to get there is by following through, just those tiny little moments of aha, spark, or when you're lit up. So if you had those today, please follow through. And then if you're just feeling social, put the fingers to the keyboards and leave a comment about it. That way we get a feedback of why these conversations are fulfilling and why they're important, and to get Karen to keep continuing on.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, thanks for that. I should say that on every show. You're good at this. I need to come to you, learn how to do podcasting after doing it for 10 years. Yeah, I never sort of say that. Like every now and then I'll say, hit the like button, subscribe. And then I get so caught up with the conversation, I forget to do all that. Like, let's just follow through, because so many people on the internet are just like, oh, that's interesting. Next, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Next. It's like they're on this search for meaning, and they don't sort of stop and follow through, like you say. Yeah.
Yeah, the pause part. I mean, that's what you're providing them, and that's the ground zero of any change that you're going to get out of this, people, is the pause moment, the acknowledgement, and just the light follow through. It could be the research is all you need. It could be that you research and you find a class and you sign up and that's what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be another rabbit hole altogether, which is great. Just, keep going.
Well, I have to say, my audience, I call them the difference makers, the new old teachers. I do attract the people who are looking to use their life in service to others in some way, which means that I don't attract that mass audience that other shows do. It's really interesting. I've sort of screamed at my guides like, why? And they said, don't worry, calm down, calm down. You are attracting people that do follow through. Whereas there are other shows that have a much bigger audience, but it's the clickers. It's like, yeah, that's interesting. Next. Oh, next. It's like they're on this voracious search for information. Can I just drink in more information? So that's who you're talking to, Jamie. So
perfect.
We'll get some people signing up to some of your courses.
Yes, come join me at the Verity Certification in January, or the basic or intermediate mediumship. We're online. It's fun. It's live stream. We'll talk.
We'll talk. Let's talk. Thank you so much for chatting with me again.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Hope you enjoyed the show we did with Jamie and that you received a lot out of what we spoke about. Yeah, as she said, there's so many people watching or listening to podcasts that don't really follow through on what they hear. Yeah, so following through is good. Even leaving comments, talking about it, starting your own groups, having discussions with other people. Let's expand this consciousness. That's what we're all here to do. If you're watching this show, it's because you're here to expand the consciousness of this world. You can do it through your work or through your personal life, but just have conversations about it. Don't just sit on your computer and just have that conversation with you and the computer. Like, get out there and start talking about it. Join groups, leave comments, email me, email Jamie, do her courses. I'm not getting a kickback for her courses, so I'm not plugging her courses for kickbacks. I just think we all need to be educated about our intuitive, empathic and psychic abilities, because I believe that the human race is going there. I think that we're all moving into a more psychic environment where communication is going to change. We're going to stop communicating verbally and start being more telepathic. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think that the amount of empaths, especially in the young people, is the beginning of that transitioning process, going from this verbal, intellectual communication to a more empathic, psychic, telepathic communication. So as the young ones come in with their expanded fields and their unbelievable empathy and then suffer for it, I think it's up to us to catch them, in the net and say, you don't need to suffer because you're an empath. You don't need to suffer because you're psychic. You can learn to handle your energy. You've got to focus on love. As a young empath, I would feel overwhelmed when I went out to supermarkets or in any crowd because I would feel so much. But when you raise your own vibration, when you do the work on yourself, you can really only tune into a similar vibrational match. So if you're depressed and you go out into the public, you are going to get hammered and slammed. But if you're in a really good vibe and you go out there in the public, you're really only going to feel a similar vibe. So you actually just feel happier when you're out there feeling everybody's happiness. You know, I went to a party the other night and my friend had hired this beautiful house, a little terrace house, and it was full of stuff. It was full of paintings. There wasn't an inch of wall that didn't have a painting on it. Old, you know, antique, bric-a-brac sort of stuff. It was fabulous. It was a fabulous house, but it was so cluttered. And as an empath, like Jamie says, you know, you feel the energy in inanimate objects, especially when someone's owned something. You know, what do they call that when a psychic can take a ring and feel into the ring and it has the imprint of the person, the energy of the person on the ring. So does furniture, so does paintings, everything. So is a psychic or an empath walking into a house that's that cluttered. It's overwhelming. So I'm there to help my friend set up and have her birthday there, and I'm dealing with my own stuff. Can I be in this environment? There was not 1 inch, there was not something. Every ledge, every table had bits and pieces on it, packed full of stuff. And the clutteredness of the energy was overwhelming me too. So I'm like, can I be in this environment? Am I going to be able to operate? And then you know what I said to myself? Get over it. You're not here to play victim to your psychic abilities or your empathic abilities. You're here to help your friend set up for her birthday party and to be here to enjoy her birthday. And that's a conversation I had with myself many times before people started to arrive, because I felt this overwhelm of this influx of energy and information coming from all this clutter, and the clutter of the energy in the place, not just the stuff, but the energetic clutter. She's giving me a sage stick and saying, can you smudge the house for me? And I'm like holding this little sage stick going, this ain't going to do it. But anyway, I indulged her and smudged the house. But really, we need to clean up our own thoughts. We're going to go into environments where it's not easy to be in. But we've just got to get over ourselves and ask ourselves why we're there and what are we going to focus on? Are we going to focus on how I'm in overwhelm, or am I going to focus on I'm here to enjoy myself, I'm here to be there for my friend, I'm here to connect with others and enjoy myself? And in the end, I had a fabulous night. You know, we had like 50 or 60 people squashed into this little house, and it was not only cluttered with stuff, it was cluttered with people. We were like dancing around each other all night, squeezing past each other. It was hilarious, but I focused on the joy of it all, and I had a great night. And I think as empaths and psychics who are victimized by our own abilities, that's what we need to do. We need to have that self-talk. Where am I going to place my focus? On how I'm being victimized by my abilities, or how I can just let that go and focus on the joy. And that's what you can do. So I hope you take that on board. If you're psychics or empaths, or if your abilities are expanding, because I think, as we discussed with Jamie, a lot of people that start to have spiritual awakenings and Kundalini experiences, their field starts to expand, their empathic abilities start to expand, and then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed in situations, supermarkets, crowds, in the street, in traffic. Yeah, but shift your focus from your overwhelm to what you want to focus on, and you'll be right. Love you all. What's coming up on the show? A few people coming up on the show. I can't remember my head. Can't remember who it is. Kevin Briggs is coming back. He's got something to tell us about next year, and we're going to explore his psychic ability more, because he's had an amazing life experience. And as he said on the show, which I only did a couple of months ago with him, he would have gone to his grave and never told anyone about it, but his guide said to him about a year and a half ago, you need to tell people about what you've experienced, you need to tell people about us, and you need to write a book. And that's what he did. And so I have had a show with him recently, but we're going to go more into it. And Jamie just gave me some names of some great people to put on the show as well that she deals with over there. So more to come. Yes, Inner Sanctum with Penny coming up next week, Energy Healer, and the beautiful Courtney Beck coming in December, who's a channel of higher consciousness. She's just had she's been traveling through the States and Hawaii, so she's got lots of stories to share with us in December. So join us for the Inner Sanctum, why don't you? And also you get to quiz me And I do teachings, deliberate creation teachings in the Inner Sanctum. Love you all. Remember to buy the book Awakened by Death, and I'll see you all next time. Big love. Bye for now.